All right. Hi, everyone. I think we're going to get started. I'm assuming that I'm good to go. All right, great. Hi, everyone. Good to see you all. My name is Helen Joseph, LMHC. I am a licensed mental health counselor. I come from Boston. I'm first generation Haitian American. In my work as a trauma therapist, mental health equity educator, and organizational wellness consultant, creativity is at the center of all of the types of work that I do because of the ways that we understand historically our community has used the arts in all of its form as a tool for resistance, for building our resilience, and for affirming the value, the power, and the importance of our voices, our stories, and our lives. So today we're going to be doing a little bit of interaction together. So first, I just want to start by asking folks, just getting a sense of who's in the room. So I'll just have you raise your hand if you're a student. Okay, so we've got a good amount of students. I'll have you raise your hand if you're staff or faculty here. Great, thank you. If you're a member of the general community. Great, thank you. So we're about like a third of each. So I want to start off by just acknowledging the incredible panelists and speakers that we've had so far this morning. I feel very grateful to be here in this space. So thank you to the Institute on Black Life. To be here speaking on Black joy in this particular moment in time, in history, in the United States, reaffirms for me the importance of the work that I do and the work that each of us are responsible for doing in our communities, which is to ensure that each and every one of us, regardless of our backgrounds, has the space to be well, to thrive, and to live a life that is respected and meaningful and fulfilling in whatever ways that we imagine. Okay, so I want to start by just kind of one of the incredibly powerful documentary that we just watched. The words of the student whose poetry piece was spoken at the end. She said something which I wrote down. I didn't catch the exact words, but it was along the lines that, where are my notes here? She carried the trauma of her ancestors within her without knowing how to heal. Part of what feels very important for me as an educator and as a provider is to connect people with the own wisdom and knowledge that lives within each and every one of us. We know through epigenetics and a lot of the research that has been done on trauma and how it manifests in our bodies, in our minds, in our spirits as individuals and also as collective communities. We know that the pain, the suffering, the trauma that generations of our family, of our communities have faced live within us on a cellular level. The impact of that grief, of the marginalization, of the disenfranchisement lives within and manifests in how we show up. One of the things that feels really important for me and why creativity is such a powerful and important tool that I like to center in my work is that the flip side of that is also true. The resilience, the determination, and the ability to continue to connect to our joy also lives within us. Allowing us as individuals, regardless of what background we come from, but especially Black Americans, Afro-Caribbeans, and other Black descendants who are descendants of chattel slavery, right? The resilience of our ancestry, the ways that despite all that we have navigated, we continue to show up each day in our creativity, in our communities, and to thrive and to strive for the betterment of our lives also lives within our DNA. So if there's one thing that I want to start us all off on is understanding that we are all resilient. We are all resilient. All of the strength, power, opportunities to continue to go forward despite all obstacles that you have faced in your life, that your parents have faced, that every person in your lineage has faced, lives within you. So I want to start there. I want to take a minute for us to just think about the ways that creativity shows up in our lives. One of our speakers this morning shared, actually quite a few of them touched on, the ways that how the arts, how we discuss the arts, how we think about creativity is reflective of the white supremacist lens that many things are viewed in our culture. So for that reason, many of us experience a disconnection from the power that lies within our own creativity because of the images that we see and the ideas that we learn about what it means to be able to represent a certain type of identity, including the identity of an artist or creative. Part of what feels really important for me to share with folks is that our creativity is an incredibly powerful tool at being able to examine and explore our identities, our experiences, the challenges that we navigate, and is also an incredibly powerful tool for helping us to connect to the power that innately is embedded within each and every one of us, including, and one of my faves, the power of our voices and our stories. Okay? So I'm going to have us do a little bit of, please bear with me, right? Bear with me. I'm going to have us do a little bit of a activity to kind of get us in thinking about our own creativity and our own joy. So I'll have us, this is a tool that is called brain spotting. I'm not going to get into the science of how it works, but based on the ways that the nerves in our eyes are tied to the nerves, are tied to our brain and how our brain processes information, we can make connections with where our eyes are pointing and some of the things that are coming up, some of the things that we're processing. So I'm going to have you just relax wherever you are in your seat, do whatever you need to do to get comfortable, make sure your feet are planted on the ground, and if you are, which I know I had to go to the bathroom to take a second to collect myself because of the intensity and the emotion that came up in that documentary. So if you are holding any of that tension, if you're holding your breath, if you're noticing anything of that sort, just notice it and try to relax. Try to relax, try to take a big deep breath in. One of the challenges that we face in the ways that our structure of our society is that many of us don't learn actively about how to care for our mental health. Many of us are not explicitly taught how to navigate challenging emotions, which is what can contribute to making it so challenging to talk about issues of race and identity in the ways that we're seeing manifested in what's happening right now in the United States, okay? So if for any reason you start to notice any discomfort, I want you to just come back to your breath, notice what's happening in your body, and try to do a little something to shake it out, okay? Our body is holding that tension. A lot of times we're holding our breath. And what I want, if there's nothing else that you take away from today, it is that I want you to start to notice how you respond. How are you showing up in these environments, in these conversations? So we'll get to how creativity can support us with that, okay? So I'm going to have us, again, in our seats. Just scan your eyes around the room. Just notice what's happening in the room. So, I don't need you to turn your heads all the way around or anything like that. So feel free to just scan, see where your eyes take you in the room, and if there is a place in the room that happens to feel connected to the feeling of joy, or the feeling of peace, or the feeling of calm, I'm going to have you stay on that spot, okay? So I'll give you a second. So you might also find that there might be a spot in which you notice something like, oh, actually, I feel really anxious looking at that spot, right? That's okay. We can go ahead and move away from that spot, okay? So we're looking for a spot where maybe we feel as calm, as peaceful, or as connected to joy. And if you have located that spot, I'm just going to have you put one finger up. All right. Great. So as you're in that spot, I want you to notice, what sensations do you notice in your body? How does your body feel? Okay. I want you to notice your breath. What is your breathing like in this moment? And I'm going to have you bring to mind a moment in time. It can be a recent moment. It can be a moment in the distant past. Bring to mind a moment that you felt very joyful. So sometimes when I talk about joy, people automatically go to, this is the horrible thing that happened, right? We know that in order to contextualize joy, we have to contextualize the other unpleasant things that we experience in our life, but that's not where we're at in this moment, okay? So what is a moment of joy? Okay, I'm seeing some smiles. I think folks have got it. One finger up if you have that moment in mind. Perfect. I'm going to have you, I've got some materials on the table. I'm going to have you grab a marker, pencil, index card, whatever material you want, and just to write a couple of words that come up associated with that moment, with that memory, with that experience. All right, so I've got a question, and I'd love to see if any folks would like to try to answer or give me their thoughts. How does creativity support our ability to connect to our joy? Any thoughts from folks? Yes. How does creativity help us express or connect to our joy? Yes. We can be authentic. Thank you so much. Absolutely. I saw a hand in the back. Gets you out of your head. Absolutely. Thank you. Hand over here, then right over here.
It gets you unstuck.
Gets you unstuck. Absolutely. Thank you so much. It removes boundaries and limitations. Absolutely. Thank you so much. Living in the moment. Yes, thank you. Beautiful answer. It's personal. Absolutely. You all just did the workshop for me. Thank you. Woo, we're done. Okay. All right. So all of these things are so relevant because of the ways that systemic oppression impacts every single one of us to different degrees, maybe based on race, gender, sexual orientation, socioeconomic status. The ways that these systems harm us go much further than the individual impact that they have in our lives. That impact reverberates throughout our entire communities, and as we talked about, echoes throughout different generations in our family line. When we are in these types of environments, our bodies experience, so oftentimes when we talk about trauma, we think about maybe a physical attack, an act of violence that you maybe individually experience, an accident of some sort. We often see as a function of these systems that there's less of an emphasis on the ways that collectively we experience trauma just by the basis of the environments that we live in, the ways that we are subjugated to these types of systemic harm, systemic and institutional violence, okay? So when we are in that trauma response, we find ourselves in fight, flight, or freeze response. Our body can't tell the difference between I am in a car accident and I am having a trauma response to I am in a workplace in which I'm being discriminated against, right? That nervous system just knows there is a threat in my environment. Many of us, as a byproduct of this, find ourselves stuck in fight, flight, or freeze. So we're holding our breaths, we're avoiding situations, we're withdrawing, we're emotionally dysregulated a lot of the time. Many of us have been dysregulated for months now, just based on what we're seeing in the media, right? The ways that we respond are outside of our control. But we don't often learn about the ways that there's no need to have shame around that. So when we bring creativity into the picture, creativity is giving us space to be in the present moment. By definition, the ways that we respond to trauma force us to either relive the past or to go so far out into the future and what we're afraid could potentially be happening. We're scanning for potential danger, and creativity allows us to be in the present moment with ourselves. In the context of our society and the systemic oppression that exists, these structures, we find ourselves in many spaces that do not want our voices to be heard. So when we sit with ourselves, and especially when we sit with each other in our creativity, we are making space to see and validate and honor our experience in ways that we may not have other spaces, external spaces, to hold space for. So when we create, we make space to see our truth, to see our value, to see our beauty, and to connect with other people. Another thing that trauma does is it impacts our ability to connect. It impacts our ability to connect with ourselves. It impacts our ability to connect with other people, right? So we're in that fear response where we've guarded ourselves, we've shielded ourselves from what we fear might be a potential danger to us. What were some of the other things that folks said? So authenticity, being in the present moment, right? Instead of, and it's just about kind of bringing our awareness to the forefront. So if I have an awareness that my response to everything happening in my environment is to completely close myself off or to silence myself, it would be the inverse of that for me then to make space for my experience, for my poetry, for my music, for my movements to exist in this world without me having the same judgment for them that I fear I might receive in our society. We know, and we've spoken so much today about how Black creativity, I don't think anyone said this, but Black creativity fuels America. Black creativity fuels our world globally. And part of that is, particularly as a Haitian American as well, I spend a lot of time working not just with, domestically in the United States, but also internationally with different communities across the Black diaspora. One of the things that I like to share with folks is, in order to survive, in order to thrive, in order to make opportunities for ourselves, we have had to be creative. We have had to be creative in order to make a way when there has not been a way that has been readily available or accessible. Creativity often is conceptualized in ways we're seeing, the arts being defunded and all kinds of other things. And I think, honestly, that's a function of trying to disempower our communities further. Because we know that there is power in trusting and in believing that our voices matter, that our lives matter, that our stories matter. When I work with trauma survivors, one of the things that I hope that they take away from our work is that we may not be in control of what has happened to us. Many of us have been disempowered by the experiences that we've had in life. Those experiences shape us. Those experiences impact our nervous system in such significant ways that we can then begin to believe that we are our experiences. And when we expand our view through our creativity and our engagement in our own experience, right? Because not seeing our experience, not wanting to look at what we have lived through, not wanting to see the truth of what people in our own communities are facing, that is a trauma response. That is an avoidance. This is so painful. I can't look at this. And when we see representations by commercial artists, but also by us as creators that show us there is power and there is value in making space to discuss and explore all parts of our experience, no matter how ugly, no matter how dark, no matter how painful, that there is value to that. And in that exploration comes our healing, the space for growth, and the space for transformation. Any thoughts or questions on any of these pieces before I move on to the next piece? All right. So I'm wondering if folks have anyone come to mind when I'm talking about the ways that artists in any form, way, shape, or form, might be speaking to the Black experience and giving a voice to experiences within the Black community. Any examples come to mind? Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. I saw another hand. Right, and part of it, just as a response to that, these types of pieces that show us as a collective, as a country, the things that we do not want to talk about can be particularly polarizing for folks who are really having that strong resistance to seeing the truth of other people's experiences. Yes?
John Batiste in his Freedom song?
Yes. Yep, absolutely. Thank you so much. Other folks? Yeah? Yeah, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Thank you. So while we think of, right, so I just asked for examples of commercial artists, right? For me, when I talk about creativity, if I'm talking about writing, movement, visual art, music, it's all the same to me, right? Because it's just different vehicles for expression. I want us all to leave this room, even if we don't necessarily identify as being an artist or being creative. A lot of that comes from, again, the messages that we receive about who's allowed to be certain things. But I want us all to examine what is the relationship that we have with our creativity, because oftentimes there is a overlay of that. What is the relationship that I have to being seen? What is the relationship that I have to my own power? What is the relationship that I have to maybe a fear of being misrepresented or a fear of being misunderstood, right? So if we look at our relationship to our creativity, there are opportunities for us to explore some of the other dynamics that exist in our own, the ways that we show up in this world, the ways that we feel that we are valued, that our experience and or stories and or what we put out in the world may be valued or has historically been devalued. So coming back to the idea of this armor, these shields that we put on ourselves. So we're in this world and we all have a different relationship to our own expression, which based on, I'll get a time check before we have a conversation. 5 minutes, okay. We're not gonna have a conversation with each other at our table. We'll save that for later. What I will say is, joy is the true armor. Our joy is the true armor. Many of the artists that you all named spoke to Black pain, spoke to Black resilience, spoke to Black joy. And when we make space for our creativity, it is an opportunity to explore. We can explore different things with that. And my invitation to you all is to explore your joy. Because in the context of the times that we're in, with the threat of being stuck in that state of dysregulation, in that state of hopelessness, in that state of feeling disempowered, there are few things more powerful that we can do than to affirm our lives matter, our joy matters, and regardless of what we face, we will continue to make space for our own humanity in the ways that our ancestors have done as they continued to sing, as they continued to dance, as they continued to write, to uplift their voices, their value, their power, and their place, not just in the United States, but globally as people of the Black diaspora. When I talk about joy as a shield, it's not the same shield as some of our defense mechanisms, some of those trauma responses. It's actually a shield that's allowing us to be open in certain ways. Because everything that piles on invites us to close ourselves off, and making space for our joy allows us to expand, to have full room for our full selves and the full range of our human experience, as each and every one of us deserves to have space for. So when we think about what it means for us to be creative in any sense, the three things I want to leave you with is that it is a way to connect with ourselves and the fullness of ourselves. It is a way to connect with other people and to connect authentically as we see ourselves and make space and give grace to see others as they authentically are without putting judgment or labels on that. And it is a way to connect and tap in to the power and the beauty of the power that each and every one of us is born with. Thank you so much. Just last thing that I want to share, I didn't even mention it, but I wrote a book, Healing What Words Won't Reach, that goes more into perfect. Thank you. I have QR codes here for you all to get $5 off the code, so I'll go ahead and pass that around to each table, $5 off the book. But this book really came from my experiences as a trauma therapist. A lot of the courses that I teach are around intersectionality, exploring our identities, and understanding how these systems of oppression really damage us regardless of race, gender, background. Every single one of us is impacted negatively by these systems, and the best thing that we can do is to be courageous in having conversations with each other, with ourselves, and engaging in our creativity to heal the pain that has been caused for many generations. Thank you.